everyone! Before we start the video, subscribe to the channel and leave your like.
I never imagined that my own brother would be able to destroy everything I built in a single week. Now sitting in the empty office of what was once the Boston headquarters of Horizon Innovations, I look at the rectangular markings on the walls where motivational boards once stood. The silence is deafening, broken only by the distant sound of boxes being stacked in the hallway. My name is Ethan Collins, and until 2 weeks ago, I was CEO of a rising technology company engaged to the woman of my dreams and proud brother of Mason Collins. Today, I'm just another failed entrepreneur trying to understand where everything went wrong. Horizon was born in my dorm room at MIT 10 years ago. While other students were planning weekend parties, I spent nights developing business management software that would revolutionize the market. Mason, 3 years younger, has always shown admiration for my work. When he graduated in administration, it was natural to bring him into the company as a partner and financial director. "You need to trust people more, Ethan," Mason used to say, criticizing my perfectionism. "Not everything needs to go through your sieve." Ironically, it was precisely my trust in him that caused our downfall. The disaster began during preparations for my wedding to Olivia. We planned a ceremony on Martha's Vineyard, something intimate but elegant. Olivia, a talented architect and daughter of one of Boston's biggest builders, had found the perfect spot, a historic home overlooking the ocean. "You deserve to relax a little," Mason insisted, when I mentioned my concern about some pending company decisions. "Focus on the wedding, I'll take care of everything around here." Those words still echo in my mind. While I picked flowers and enjoyed dishes with Olivia, Mason negotiated a deal that would change our lives. Unbeknownst to me, he invested 70% of our working capital in a promising artificial intelligence startup. The company declared bankruptcy 3 days later, taking all of our investment with it. "It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," Mason tried to justify when I confronted him. "All indicators pointed to guaranteed success. How would I know?" But he should have known. As CFO, it was his obligation to carry out appropriate due diligence. As my brother, it was your duty to consult me before making such a risky decision. The worst part wasn't losing the money. It was the breach of trust. The following events unfolded like a slow-motion nightmare. Our main clients, upon learning of the financial crisis, began to cancel contracts. Suppliers demanded advance payments. Payroll has become a monthly challenge. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding," Olivia suggested one night, her soft voice trying to mask her concern. We were sitting in our Back Bay apartment, surrounded by decor catalogs and guest lists that now felt like fate's cruel joke. "It's temporary," I tried to argue more to convince myself. "We will get through this together." But Olivia knew the market too well to believe in false hope. A week later, she returned the engagement ring. "I can't build a future on shaky foundations," were his last words before walking out the door. The final blow came when our largest investor withdrew its contribution, citing loss of confidence in management. In less than a month, the company I built from scratch was on the brink of bankruptcy. 50 dedicated employees lost their jobs, dreams were destroyed, all because I trusted my brother. The last time I saw Mason was during the company's exit meeting. He tried to get closer, eyes red and voice choked. "Ethan, I'm sorry, I never wanted to." I raised my hand, interrupting him. "I don't want your apology, Mason. I just want you out of my life." Now, a year later, our parents organize family dinners, trying to reconcile us. "Family is forever," my mother insists on the phone. "Mason is hurting just as much as you are." But how can I forgive someone who destroyed not only my business but my dreams? How can we trust again someone who has proven capable of making such irresponsible decisions? As I keep the last photo of the Horizon team in a box, I reflect on the price of betrayed trust. It's not just the millions lost or the contracts cancelled. It's the loss of innocence, of faith in those closest to us, of the feeling of security that only family can provide. The sun sets over the Boston skyline, painting the sky in orange tones that are reflected in the windows of the skyscrapers. Somewhere in the city, Mason is probably in his apartment, perhaps also thinking about everything that happened. But to me, he's no longer my brother. He's just a painful reminder of how a moment of recklessness can destroy decades of affection. I close the office door for the last time, carrying only a box of memories and the certainty that some fractures are too deep to be repaired. The elevator descends in silence, marking the end of one chapter of my life and the beginning of another, where the word family carries a different weight, darker and more complex than I ever imagined possible. It has been 365 days since I last closed Horizon's doors. Boston is still the same, but I've changed. Every corner of the city holds memories. I'd rather avoid the cafe where I used to meet Mason for our weekly lunches, the architecture office where I met Olivia, the bank where we signed our first big loan. Today I work as an independent technology consultant. It's ironic how life turns. Around now I help other startups not make the same mistakes that destroyed mine. My new office is a desk at WeWork in Cambridge, far enough from the CBD to avoid unwanted encounters with old acquaintances. "Ethan, you can't keep avoiding Sunday dinners," my mother says on the phone, her voice carrying that familiar mix of worry and determination. "Your father turned 60 yesterday and you didn't even show up to the celebration." The weight of guilt squeezes my chest. It wasn't fair to punish my parents for what Mason did, but the thought of sitting at the table with him turns my stomach. "Sorry, Mom, I had an important project due." "Mason asked for you," she continues, ignoring my lame excuse. "He's different, son, more mature. He's working at an NGO that helps small entrepreneurs." I hang up the phone before she finishes. The irony is almost painful, Mason, helping other entrepreneurs after destroying his own brother's business. But something about your words bothers me more than I care to admit. During my daily walk along the Charles River, I run into David Chen, my former director of development at Horizon. He's running with his headphones on, but stops when he sees me. "Ethan, how long?" His smile is genuine, but his eyes carry a shadow of pity that irritates me deeply. "How are you, David? I heard Meta hired you." "Yes, I'm leading an interesting project there." He hesitates for a moment. "You know I ran into your brother last week. I don't want to know," I cut in dryly. "What Mason does or doesn't do is no longer my business." David looks at me with an expression that mixes understanding and disapproval. "He's really sorry, Ethan. Sometimes people deserve a second chance." His words haunt me for the rest of the day. At night, alone in my new apartment, much smaller than my previous one in Back Bay, I find an old box of photos that I haven't had the courage to open yet. At the top is a picture of Mason and I at his graduation, smiles wide arms around each other's shoulders. We were so close. My phone vibrates. It's a message from Olivia. My heart skips a beat before reading, "I need to return some of your books that I found while moving. Can we meet up?" 3 days later, we're sitting at Tata Bakery in Beacon Hill. Olivia is prettier than I remember, her brown hair shorter, a different engagement ring on her left hand. "I met him at my father's construction company," she explains without me asking. "We got married in December." "Cheers," I murmur, trying to sound sincere. "Ethan." She hesitates, stirring her unsweetened coffee. "I know it's none of my business, but you should talk to Mason." "Not you too," I sigh, frustrated. "He came looking for me a few months ago," she continues. "He's devastated, not only because of what happened to the company, but especially because of losing his brother. He's changed, Ethan." "People don't change that much," I respond bitterly. "You've changed," she observes. "The Ethan I knew would never let pride destroy such an important relationship." His words hit me like a punch in the gut. I return home, distraught, mentally replaying all the moments Mason was by my side. When our father had a heart attack, it was Mason who coordinated everything at the hospital while I was paralyzed with fear. When I lost my first big client proposal, he was the one who convinced me not to give up. Did a stupid decision erase all of that? That night I receive an unexpected email. It's from Mr. Thompson, our former lead investor in Horizon. He mentions that Mason recently came to him presenting a detailed plan to compensate for part of the losses with his own resources. "Your brother is selling the apartment and liquidating his savings to try to right his wrongs," Thompson wrote. "It doesn't erase the past, but it demonstrates character." I sit on my porch watching the lights of Cambridge reflected in the Charles River. The cold October air makes me shiver, or maybe it's the weight of the day's revelations. I pick up my phone and for the first time in a year, open the last message. Mason sent me still unread, brother. I know words can't fix what I did, but I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. Not for the money or the company, but for our family. I miss you every day. I close my eyes, letting the tears finally fall. The anger I've cultivated for so long begins to give way to something different, a mixture of sadness and tiredness. I realize that holding on to this resentment is consuming me as much as the initial betrayal. I look at the graduation photo again. Two young people full of dreams and mutual trust. Is that relationship really dead, or just hurting, waiting for a chance to heal? My phone vibrates again. It's my mother. Sunday is my and your father's wedding anniversary. Please come to dinner with us. Your family misses you. This time I don't hang up right away. Maybe it's time to face not just Mason but my own demons. After all, how can I advise other entrepreneurs about resilience and overcoming when I can't? Practice the same in my personal life. The night progresses and with it comes a clarity I haven't felt in a long time. Tomorrow will be another day, and for the first time in a year I'm considering the possibility that not all fractures are irreparable. Some just need time, courage, and the humility to take a first step towards healing. The invitation to my parents' wedding anniversary dinner remains on my desk as a persistent reminder of the choices I need to make. 3 days have passed since my conversation with Olivia, and her words about change and pride continue to echo in my mind. This morning, I received an unexpected call from Sarah Martinez, my former assistant at Horizon. "Sorry to bother you, Ethan," she began hesitantly, "but I thought you should know. Mason has been appearing regularly at the Roxbury Community Centre, offering free consultations to small business owners. Many are immigrants trying to start from scratch like my parents once were." The information caught me off guard. Mason, who has always valued expensive restaurants and designer clothes, now dedicating his free time to helping people who can barely pay the bills. Part of me wants to believe it's just an attempt to clear her conscience, but something in Sarah's tone suggests a deeper transformation. I head to the address Sarah gave me, parking across the street from the community centre. Through the window, I can see Mason sitting with an elderly man, analysing papers and gesturing patiently. His expensive suit has been replaced by a simple shirt and his features seem more serene, although filled with a sadness I've never seen before. A lady approaches my car. "You're his brother, aren't you?" he asks, surprising me. "Mason has your picture in his wallet. He talks about you a lot when he's here." I swallow hard, unable to respond. The lady continues, "You know he saved my little baking business. I was on the verge of closing because of problems with back taxes. Not only did Mason help me with the paperwork he invested out of his own pocket, so I wouldn't lose everything." I return home with my head spinning. On the way, I stop at the same cafe where Mason and I used to meet. Barista Joe, who has known us for years, serves me my usual coffee. "Your brother was here yesterday," Joe comments, wiping down the counter. "Still orders 2 coffees every time you come, leaves yours untouched on the table as if waiting for you to show up." That night, rummaging through old boxes for documents, I find Horizon's original business plan. In the margins there are notes from Mason: check intellectual property protection, suggest expansion to international market, Ethan needs more rest. I realize that even before the fateful decision that separated us, he always worried about me. Sunday arrives faster than you expected. I park in front of my parents' house in Newton, where we grew up. Mason's Audi is already there, and I can see his silhouette through the living room window. My heart races, and for a moment I consider turning around. "You came," my mother says as she opens the door, tears in her eyes. The familiar smell of homemade lasagna fills the air, and memories of hundreds of family dinners flood my mind. Mason is standing in the room, pale as if he's seen a ghost. "Ethan," he murmurs, his voice shaking slightly. The silence that follows is deafening. "I'm going to check the oven," our mother says discreetly, leaving us alone. I watch my brother more closely now. He has lost weight and premature greys appear on his temples. His eyes hold a mixture of hope and fear that completely disarms me. "You sold your apartment?" I say, finally breaking the ice. Yes, he confirms, surprised that I know. It was the least he could do to start compensating the investors. Mr. Thompson said he spoke to you. Why are you helping people at the community center? Mason sits heavily on the couch. Because I learned the hard way how much our decisions can affect the lives of others. Every person I help there is a small attempt to make up for the harm I caused. Not just to you, but to all the Horizon employees who lost their jobs because of me. Sarah said you invested your own savings in some of them. It's the least I can do, he replies, running a hand over his tired face. You know Ethan losing the company was terrible, but losing you, it destroyed me. You were always my guiding light, my example, you still are. I sit in the opposite seat feeling the weight of a year of anger and hurt begin to lift. Why didn't you consult me before making that investment? Because he was arrogant and foolish, Mason admits, looking straight into my eyes. I wanted to prove that. I could make important decisions on my own, that I wasn't just the little brother of the technology genius. I was self-centered and childish, and I destroyed everything you built out of pure pride. Your words are interrupted by the sound of dishes in the kitchen. Our mother is purposely making noise, giving us privacy, while she pretends to set the table. I can't undo what happened. I continue, choosing my words carefully. The trust I had in you has been broken in a way that I don't know can ever be fully repaired. I know, he replies, and I can see tears forming in his eyes. I'm not asking you to trust me again like you used to. I just want my brother back in my life, even if it's just for Sunday dinners with our parents. The aroma of lasagna intensifies, bringing back memories of simpler times when we were just two brothers dreaming of the future. I realized that while I was holding on to past anger, Mason was actively trying to become a better person. Maybe, I say finally, we can start with Sunday dinners. The smile that lights up Mason's face is genuine, mixed with relief and gratitude. Our mother chooses this moment to announce that dinner is served, and for the first time in a year, we walk to the dinner table together. It's not a happy ending. There's still a lot to be rebuilt, and lost trust won't return overnight. But perhaps it's a new beginning, one, where forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing to move forward, carrying the lessons of the past as we build a different future. When our father raises his glass to toast his 35 years of marriage, I realize that some things are more important than pride or resentment. Family, as our mother always said, isn't just about the happy times. It's about learning to get through the tough times together too. My parents' wedding anniversary dinner marked the beginning of a fragile reconciliation with Mason. Over the next few weeks, we maintained cautious contact, occasional messages, brief meetings over Sunday lunches, superficial conversations about the weather and sports. Like two clumsy dancers, we tried to relearn the steps of a relationship that was previously natural. One Thursday morning, I get a call from David Chen. Ethan, I need to tell you something. Meta is developing software very similar to Horizon's core. I just saw the initial presentation and, well, I think we should talk in person. I meet David at a low-key cafe in Kendall Square. He shows me screenshots of the project on his tablet. It's virtually identical to your original code, but with some superficial modifications. Someone clearly had access to our work before Horizon went bankrupt. My stomach drops. Only 3 people had full access to the source code, me, David, and Mason. Do you think? No, David interrupts me. Mason would never sell our technology. In fact, he turned down several buyout offers in the company's final days, even when we were desperate for capital. I spend the afternoon investigating, calling old contacts. I discover that Jeremy Sullivan, our former systems administrator, is now working at Meta. The same Jeremy who had access to the backup server and left suddenly 2 weeks before the bankruptcy. We need a lawyer who specializes in intellectual property, says David. We still have all the copyright registrations, but it will be an expensive battle. I hesitate for a moment before making the call I never imagined I would make. Mason answers on the second ring. We need to talk about Horizon, I say, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. It's important. Half an hour later, the 3 of us, me, Mason, and David, are gathered in my office at WeWork. As David explains the situation, I watch Mason's reactions. His expression changes from surprise to anger, and finally to determination. "Jeremy," he murmurs, shaking his head. He was acting strange these last few weeks. He requested extraordinary access to the server for emergency maintenance. "We need to act fast," says David, "but a process of this size will cost a fortune." Mason stands up abruptly. "I'll call Mr. Thompson. He knows the best intellectual property lawyers on the East Coast. And," he hesitates, "I still have some savings from selling the condo." "No," I interrupt. "You're already using this money to reimburse investors and help with the community center. This is different, Ethan. It's about protecting something you created, something that was ours." The word "our" hangs in the air like a fragile bridge between the past and the present. I realize that despite everything, Mason never stopped feeling part of Horizon. Over the next few weeks, we were plunged into an intense legal battle. Mason proves invaluable retrieving old documents, reconstructing timelines, connecting dots I'd forgotten. His experience in corporate finance helps us build a solid case. On a particularly exhausting evening, after hours of reviewing documents, Mason shares something that takes me by surprise. "Did you know I turned down an offer from Oracle a week before I made that disastrous investment?" he says, rubbing his tired eyes. "They wanted to buy Horizon for $50 million. "What? Why didn't you ever tell me that?" "Because you always said that Horizon wasn't for sale. It was your dream, your creation. I respected that." He pauses. "Ironically, I ended up destroying everything anyway." Something changes inside me at that moment. The revelation that Mason had turned down a fortune to protect my vision, even though he later made a catastrophic mistake, adds a new layer of complexity to our story. The case against Meta advances, and gradually our professional dynamics begin to restore some of the old confidence. Mason is still as meticulous with numbers as he always was, but now there's a caution to his decisions that demonstrates how much the experience has changed him. On a particularly cold Sunday in December, I get an unexpected text from Olivia. "I saw the news about the lawsuit against Meta. I'm glad to see you and Mason working together again." I look out the window of my apartment, watching the snow fall gently over Cambridge. In the reflection of the glass, I see not only my face, but the echo of all the decisions that brought us here. The anger that once consumed me was gradually replaced by something more complex, and understanding that people like computer code can be flawed and still deserve a chance to debug. "I think it's time to rebuild," I tell Mason during our next meeting. "Not just the legal process, but something new. A new company starting from scratch." His eyes widen in surprise. "You mean—" "Yes, but this time we will do it differently. Important decisions will be made together with clear governance protocols." I pause. "And this time we're going to build something not just on code and contracts, but on the lessons we learned." Mason nods slowly, and for the first time in a long time I see in him not just my little brother who made a terrible mistake, but a partner who has emerged stronger from his own failures. The reconstruction process will be long, both in terms of family and professional ties. But perhaps this is how the strongest structures are built, not despite the fractures, but through them, filling the cracks with a deeper understanding of what it means to trust, forgive, and begin again. The case against Meta lasted 8 months. During this time, something unexpected happened. Mason and I rediscovered not only our professional dynamics, but also fragments of the former complicity we shared. The long nights, analyzing documents, strategic discussions, and even moments of frustration brought us closer in a way I never imagined possible. On a particularly tense afternoon, as we waited to hear from our lawyers in a downtown Boston cafe, Mason surprised me with a confession. "Remember when I broke your Commodore 64 when we were kids?" he asked absent-mindedly, stirring his coffee. "You had spent months programming that adventure game. How could I forget? It was my first serious programming project. I never told you why I did that," he continued, his voice filled with old guilt. "It wasn't an accident. I was jealous because Dad only talked about your talent with computers. I wanted to get attention too." The revelation caught me off guard. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I realized that the pattern repeated itself with Horizon. Deep down, he was still that kid trying to prove his worth, making impulsive decisions to show that he could also be brilliant." He paused. The difference is that this time the price was much higher. In that moment, something clicked in my mind, a deeper understanding of Mason's actions, not just with Horizon but throughout our lives. There has always been this silent competition between us, fueled by unspoken expectations and inevitable comparisons. The agreement with Meta came in October, more generous than we expected. In addition to substantial financial compensation, we received the right to develop and commercialize our original technology without restrictions. It was a second chance we didn't expect to receive. "And now?" asked David during our celebratory gathering at the Lookout rooftop bar with the nighttime view of Boston, serving as the backdrop for our discussions about the future. "Now," I replied, exchanging a meaningful look with Mason. "We start from scratch, but different. Our new company, Phoenix Technologies, a name Mason suggested with a wry smile, was born with lessons learned the hard way. We established a robust advisory board, clear governance protocols, and most importantly, a decision-making structure that balanced innovation with prudence." Mason took on a role that perfectly suited his recent experience, Director of Corporate Social Responsibility. His work at the Roxbury Community Center not only continued, but expanded into a formal mentoring program for small entrepreneurs. "You know what's funny?" he said to me one day as we hosted our first workshop for budding startups. "I ended up finding my true calling through the biggest mistake of my life." The return of some former Horizon employees was especially moving. Sarah Martinez not only returned as our operations manager, but brought with her several ideas inspired by her experience with small family businesses. On a particularly meaningful Sunday, during another of the family dinners that had become routine again, I received a message from Olivia. "I saw the article about Phoenix in the Boston Globe. You two have built something really special this time." I looked at Mason, who was playing with my newborn niece, our younger sister, Claire's daughter, and realized how much we had grown. The pain of betrayal hasn't completely disappeared. Some scars never fully go away, but we have learned to build something new on its foundations. "Ethan," my mother called from the kitchen, "help your brother set the table." The simplicity of the request made me smile. How many times had she said those same words throughout our childhood? Now they carried a different weight. No longer a motherly command, but a gentle reminder that some roles in our lives are permanent regardless of the storms we face. Our father, watching as we organized the dishes, commented, "You two remind me of your grandfather and your Uncle George. They also had their big fight in business. They didn't speak to each other for years. In the end, they realized that no professional success is worth the loss of a brother. Phoenix grew more sustainably than Horizon. We've learned to celebrate not just the big contracts, but also the small wins, like when one of Mason's mentored entrepreneurs got their first significant investment, or when our development team created an innovative solution to a complex problem." A year after Phoenix launched, we hosted a celebration party in the same place where Horizon had started, the old MIT building, where I developed the first prototype. Mason gave a speech that surprised everyone with its honesty. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to understand what really matters." Phoenix isn't just a technology company. It's proof that it's possible to rebuild from the ashes. Not just business, but relationships, trust, and dreams. Looking at our new team, at the familiar faces mixed with new talent, I realized we had created something more valuable than a successful company. We have built a legacy of resilience, forgiveness, and transformation. The sun sets over the Charles River, painting the Boston sky with shades of orange and purple. Mason and I are in my new office, finalizing details on an important project. The photo of the old Horizon team still sits on my desk, but now next to it is a new one. Our family together last Christmas, genuine smiles on everyone's faces. "Hey, Ethan," Mason says, interrupting my thoughts. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Thank you for not giving up on us," I respond, realizing that sometimes the greatest victories come not from winning battles, but from learning to make peace with our own imperfections and those of those we love. Phoenix continues to grow, but its greatest achievement is not in its balance sheet numbers or market value. It is daily proof that it is possible to transform the biggest mistakes into lessons and the biggest losses into opportunities for a fresh start. After all, As our father always says, true success is not just in what we build, but in who we become along the journey.